bare soil exposed to sunlight is like second by second losing its nutrients, like basically the sun bleaches things. So anytime you've got soil that's exposed to all the elements, it's losing nutrients in real time.
You're listening to How I Grow This, exploring stories of gardeners from across the globe as we learn from their biggest tips and tricks to some of the things not to do. I'm your host, Luke Hammond.
I am so excited about today's guest on the How I Grow This podcast. For those of you who don't know, this is a podcast where we interview growers from across the globe and kind of dive into their context, how they grow, what they grow. And today's guest is somebody who has taught people all over the world, has tons of books, and helps turn people's gardens and passion into profit. That guest is none other than Gardenary Nicole Burke. Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I cannot wait for this conversation.
Awesome. Well, I want to kind of start a little bit early because many people probably don't know your backstory. They've probably just heard a little bit of the business or seen you on social media somewhere. So Tell me a little bit about your story getting into gardening and then how that began to morph over the years.
Yes, I am the most unlikely gardener, I think, on the planet. I am one of two daughters, and my dad, he treated us like, sons. So he would wake us up at like 6 a.m. on Saturday mornings. We had to mow the yard, weed eat. This was before blowers. I was like sweeping the sidewalks. I'm ancient, obviously. And I swore to my parents I would never have a garden. I literally said to my dad, when I grow up, I'm going to have a yard of gravel. Like, I will not ever do yard work. I mean, those were such true words that came out of my mouth. And so I studied accounting and math in college, and I went overseas actually after college. And in high school, college is I'll try to speed this story up as it gets faster, I promise. In high school, college, I developed a food addiction and just a really unhealthy relationship with food in my body. And then I went to China. Actually, I lived among an agricultural community for about 2 or 3 years after college. And that exposed me for the first time to fresh, seasonal, local food. And people who food was part of their whole day, right? They would wake up and they didn't eat right away. They didn't go to the pantry and grab a box of cereal. They went outside and they started gathering things to make a fire and gathering greens for the soup. And I lived there and got to be exposed to that long enough. I didn't even have words for it at the time, but I realized I was being exposed to agrarian culture, which is, the way all of our ancestors grew up and lived. And I had never seen that before. So I didn't realize it was happening to me and what was happening. But over those years, I started to heal in the sense of like my relationship to food and also my love for just really good food. I don't know if you've ever been in Asia, but my goodness, they literally like pick it and cook it and eat it within like an hour. And it was just the most amazing food I've ever eaten. My gut healed. It was just so great. But I didn't know what was happening to me. So I came back to the States, got married. Fast forward, my husband's going through grad school and we were having little kids, and life was fast paced and crazy. I barely had time to brush my teeth. And we were living in Nashville, Tennessee. My husband was postdocing at Vanderbilt. We had very little money, very little time, and we were renting at the time. And I went to my parents' house in Mississippi for the summer just to have a couple weeks to get my mom and dad's help with all these little kids. And my mom had a little backyard garden, and my daughter at the time was 3, my oldest, and she had the best time. We picked tomatoes and basil and garlic, and we went over to their neighbors and picked blueberries. And when we got home, she said, "Mom, when are you going to start my garden?" And I was like, as soon as I have a moment to, get dressed, right? So anyway, that summer, it was the wrong time. It was crazy, but we started our first garden that summer in our backyard that we were renting. And everything was a fail. But fast forward a few years later, we moved to Houston, Texas. My husband's a chemist, so he was working at MD Anderson Cancer Center there. And, he's the researcher. He's the guy who does things slowly. I'm a fly by the seat of my pants kind of girl. he did the research. We figured out the raised beds. He did research on the soil. He figured out things we could grow from seed and the seasons. He actually did like the real work of figuring out what it takes to garden. And that first fall season in Houston, oh my goodness, Luke, greens were coming out of our ears, literally. It was just every day I could
Just
step
crushed it.
outside. Yeah, cut lettuce. And all of a sudden I was transported back to China. And it
Mm,
was like, at this point, I was there '01 to '03. So this was like, this was 10 years later.
mm,
And all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, this is a piece of that. Like this, I'm not a farmer. I'm not agrarian. I'm not like, homesteading here, but these little moments of like stepping outside my back door, grabbing some lettuces, making Jason a salad for lunch to bring to work, making my kids a little crudité, for our snack break. And it was like, it brought me back and I was like, oh, home gardening is the bridge between the old
mm.
agrarian lifestyle that we've left behind and the new information technological lifestyle that we live now. And I was hooked. Like
Mm.
I just fell in love with it. It became part of my everyday. And you could say I became like a evangelist for the garden. That's why my first book is called Kitchen Garden Revival. I just wanted everybody to have one because it literally just was my happy place. And I started to realize this is not that hard and it's something we can all do.
Wow, that was I was like, whoa, I have like so many questions. Okay, let
Be
me
careful what questions you ask me, Luke. I just, I got long answers for you.
No, I love it. That was amazing. I want to ask the question because the first thing that I think it was that your language just totally surprised me. I developed a food addiction.
Yeah,
Um, are you okay going into that?
sure. Yeah. So looking back, basically, I was a teenager who didn't know how to deal with emotions. So I would go to school. It started probably seventh, eighth grade, but definitely worsened as I got into high school.
Okay.
So my body was maturing. So I had this was in the '90s. So it was the Kate Moss era, like the Calvin Klein
Mm,
advertisements where
mm-hmm,
Kate is like literally a stick, right? So
mm-hmm.
that was kind of the ideal put in front of us.
Yeah.
I'm not naturally that way, but then I worsened it because I would go to school, get my feelings hurt, boys would say mean things or I probably did some mean things too. And then I hadn't learned how to process my emotions in a healthy way. And so I would come home and I would just head to the pantry. And so,
Mm.
that was the era of Snackwell's cookies. I would like down an entire box of Snackwell's cookies. I would take a bag of pretzels, eat the whole thing. I would do the Frosted Flakes, like fill it up, get all the milk and then run out of cereal. So put in some more cereal and then run out of milk. So put in some more
Oh,
milk,
that's a
and
beautiful cycle. That's
I'm
that's the wonderful cycle right there.
I'm 3 bowls into Frosted Flakes, before I know it. Anyway, I would eat until I would hurt. I would eat
Oh,
until
wow.
my stomach hurt. And then I no longer had to think about what was actually happening in my life. I could just obsess over the food situation, right? Like I could wake up in the morning and go, I'm not, I wouldn't even think about what I was actually feeling as a human, a developing human. I would go, today I'm not going to overeat. I'm not going to overeat, and then I would get to 3, 4 p.m., feel terrible about whatever happened that day. And then I would overeat and then I would obsess and shame myself over that. So it was just this endless cycle. And
Mm.
you can see if you look at photos of me from like ninth grade all the way to like 23, 24, actually until I came back from China, my weight is just going up and down. I was never like obese, but my weight was just going up and down. And it was a sign of this internal struggle. And it literally, I watched this movie, Pay It Forward. I don't know if you remember this movie. It's so good. This little boy has an alcoholic mom. Helen Hunt is the mom. And I was watching this actually when I was living in China, and I was watching Helen like battling alcoholism, and I was like, that is what I have with food. Like she
Mm.
wanted to quit and she wanted to have this healthy relationship with the substance and she just couldn't. And I was like, the hardest part about food, like with alcohol, you can just be abstinent, right? You can just not go to a bar. You can just not buy vodka and put it in your cupboard, right? But like you have to eat, you like if you're going to live, you have to eat. And so it was like I was being exposed every day to the very thing that was tormenting me. And yeah, it wasn't until I lived in China, got exposed to like this. Basically, I realized like I wasn't attaching food to physical movement. And so I watched these people in China, and it's like every time they put a bite in their mouth, there was physical movement. They had to go outside. They had to
Mm,
have the sky above them. They had to breathe like real air. And they had to do work. They had to physically work to eat.
mhm,
And all that was like, it just started to click. It was like, oh, like, it's not like, yes, I have, I need to learn to process my emotions better. But also, like, I'm living in a culture where the food system is broken,
mhm,
where I can literally eat like 3,000 calories in one sitting and not have to move a muscle. And it was like, this is a problem, It's like,
mm.
it was something for me to solve, but it was also a system that I was living in that worsened it, and made it even harder.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for going into that. That's one of those things that I didn't want to glaze over because I think so many people have that same issue. I know that like that's like a wrestling ship from my side. Like I know that when if tensions rise in the house and you're like things are rising and I'm like looking at the pantry or not the pantry, like where's that chocolate stored? And you're like,
Yes. Where's the ice cream?
this will help. I know it. You're like, wait,
Totally.
no, it's probably the
And
wrong solution.
it does for a second, right? It's like,
Right.
it's very, it's comfort. And I think we developed as humans, right? Like that is,
Mm.
we developed as human beings for food to comfort us. It's a feedback loop that can be really good for us. The problem is just the food got all messed up and we don't have the other parts of it.
To fixing that lifestyle associated with how that food is being procured or put in front of you and the
Yeah.
ease of access and the kinds of food that the access, because it's very different going to the garden and cutting some brassicas out and some salads and pulling up a few roots and making us a vegetable salad over the comfort foods we so fondly talk about.
Totally. Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
different thing.
I realized there was like this insatiable part of me, like a part of me that just never felt full. And that was part of what I was trying to fill up with Frosted Flakes.
Mm,
And when I learned over, this was kind of the bridge between when I was in China and then when we started gardening, is like, um, this phrase that I use all the time. I use it with my kids now too, is fill up on the good stuff. So it was like
mhm,
the like forbidden foods didn't work for me, like having these things that like I'm that kind of person. I don't do well with like no sugar, no chocolate, no, I'm not in that makes me
mhm,
want it even more. But what does work for me is good stuff first,
mm,
right? So like I won't say to myself, I can't have that ice cream or whatever. I'll say I can have the ice cream, but first I'm going to eat all these real whole foods that I worked in, that are from my garden or,
mhm.
from a good source. And then if I'm still hungry, I can have some ice cream. And
Wow.
that's what really started to shift things for me, is this concept of fill up on the good stuff. So my kids, be like, can I have a
Mhm,
soda? I'm like, yeah, but you have to drink 2 glasses of water first. And so it's like, I've tried with them not to have these like hands off foods, but just this concept of like, you can
mhm.
have it, but just get a lot of good stuff in there first. And it really has helped me so much.
That's awesome. Now, talk to me a little bit about that first garden. And did I hear you right? And that first garden was in Houston, or was it
First garden was in Nashville
okay
in
in
our
Nashville? Okay,
It's kinda
and
confusing because we did a loop. So we went
right.
Nashville to Houston to Chicago back to Nashville. So,
Okay, great.
yes.
And so you had gone down to Mississippi. You've experienced China again in your mom's house and home
Yeah.
with now your daughter,
Yeah.
and you're like, whoa, there's something here
Yeah.
that I've been missing in how we're living. But I'm normal. I'm not like going to sell everything and become the homesteader, which is like the new movement right now, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
That's not
But
me.
but I exist in,
Suburbia.
career path and suburban and
Mhm.
all this stuff. How can I incorporate a garden into my busy lifestyle?
Yeah.
And then your researcher husband's like, I got this.
Yeah.
And is like, okay, we're doing raised beds. We're going to do really good soil, and here's your stuff. I'll build it. Here you go. And that's what started it. Take us from there to where you began to, I guess, develop it and just move in from stylistic changes of your gardening experience. So it was one raised bed, a
Yeah.
bunch of fall crops in Nashville, and then let's go from there.
Okay. So, a little shift in the timeline. So, very first garden was in ground in Nashville. We lived on a
Okay.
slope. Our backyard went like this, whoop, just like most yards in Nashville. Especially ours because we were renting. No one wanted to buy that, that house. So my husband had a friend from the lab who he was farming basically in his yard, row farming. So he brought his tiller over and we tilled up this little spot and we planted in the ground. That we did mostly from seed. We tried like all kinds of stuff, random things like corn, potatoes, beans, zinnias. They were all in these little rows. And hardly anything worked, like literally. I think we
Mm,
had some zinnias. The corn grew up and all fell over because we didn't plant enough rows. We did dig some potatoes. Like that was basically it. Okay. So that was very first season. Next season, we're still in Nashville. Jason's like, let's try some raised beds. So he brings in 4x4s, build a little short raised bed. We didn't really get good soil. We just grabbed some stuff from Lowe's or Home Depot. Threw up 5 tomatoes in a little cage. That was our
mhm,
second attempt. Coons ate them all. So then we finish Jason's postdoc and he gets the job at MD Anderson. So we move there. We live there through a summer, kind of experience what the summer's like. And then we're like, all right, phew, we survived the summer in Houston. Now let's set up the garden. So that was the point. Jason had taken like January to October or September to like read
mhm,
up. There was a great book in Houston called Year Round Gardening in Houston by this PhD, Bob Randall. Very cool book. So Jason read that. And then he built bigger beds. So we built 3 4x8 beds, 4x8 by
mhm,
2. So we had, what is that, 32, 64, almost 100 square feet. We lined them right up along the side. We had this one edge on our driveway, very small backyard. And then he got this sandy loam soil based on like all the things he'd researched. Then we put all these seeds in. So that first year, so this would have been our third season gardening, but our first
mm,
season with this new setup in a new climate. If
mm,
you're not familiar, or if you are, if you live in people listening, if you're in a warmer place, so like Florida, Arizona, New Mexico, I hadn't known this because I'd never lived in like a frost-free area. But
uh-huh,
basically, you have some exceptions, but for the most part, Houston's winter is frost-free. And so you might drop down in January or February, but October, November, December is frost-free and it's lovely. It finally gets better there. And so, yeah, so we had all the things you were talking about, peas, carrots, lettuces. And this is when I learned the magic of cut and come again. Because all the things we
mm,
tried in Nashville were fruiting crops, right? So they were like this one big harvest and then you're done. And if there was a pest, if there was a disease, if a raccoon ate it, you lost the whole thing that you waited 90 days to get. So here in this first garden, I learned the magic of greens and roots that take 45, 60 days to produce. And then most of them are multiple harvests. So we had this spring mix, and I would literally cut and I'd come back the next day and I'd cut and I'd come back the next day and I'd cut. And you could never even hardly tell that I had harvested anything. So I was
mhm,
like bartering with this stuff. I had 4 kids at the time. So I'd call a neighbor like, can you babysit? I'll give you like lettuce for a year, for free and it'll taste good.
I
Like
love it.
this. And we would go like bring cilantro. I remember one day we made like 15 bunches of cilantro because we were growing so much and brought it to all of our neighbors. Like it was just literally coming out of our ears, all from seed, and it just all winter long. And so that was the fall and winter 2013 into 2014. And then we did it again. And then we had the entire year of success in 2014 following that year round plan. So this was also my first exposure to a hot season. So in
Mm,
Nashville, we basically go like cool, warm, cool, maybe a little cold. We have a little bit where you'd call it hot, but not really. And Houston exposed me to this concept of like, there's a period of the year when tomatoes don't work, cucumbers, all those quintessential garden vegetables don't work. So I experienced that first summer. So if you're listening and you're in those warm places, the winter's amazing, but a lot of people get the summer garden wrong. And we did that first summer. So we tried to have tomatoes and all those like normal quintessential garden things June through August, and they just burn up or just sat there dormant. And so that's when I started to click that like, oh, like there's multiple seasons in a garden.
Hmm.
Like there are 3 or 4 plantings. So we got that set up right. And I figured out the magic of the different types of plants, leaves, roots, and fruit. And then I figured out the seasons. And you can see the reflection of these things in my books. So like my
Hmm.
first book is Kitchen Garden Revival, which is all about the setup. So it's all those things Jason figured out. Then the second book is called Leaves, Roots, and Fruit, which was my aha moment of like,
Hmm.
oh, leaves are easy, roots are pretty easy, fruit is hard. And then my last book, 5 Minute Gardener, is about the 4 seasons of the garden. And that was, what I learned that time in Houston when it went, oh my goodness, we literally plant 4 times a year in Houston. And I took that with me as I started my business that next fall. So it was like September of 2015. So we're just coming up on 10 years when I started my first business. So I mean, if you can't tell already, I'm just one of those people where it's like the minute I master something, I'm going to turn it into a business.
Yeah. Well, you maximize your life experience, right?
So that's exactly what I did. So it's like as soon as I figured it out, I had been homeschooling and we decided to put the kids into school. And I was ready to go back to work. I like cleaned my house from head to toe, like 2 days. And I was like, okay, that's done. Let's move on to something else. And so I was ready to work again, but I wanted to work on my own time. I had 4
Mm.
kids. My youngest was in preschool. So I wanted to be working 8 to 12. And I thought, I love the garden so much. I wonder if I could turn this into something. And at first, I was going to sell stuff that I grew in my garden. And I was talking to a good friend, a good homeschooling friend of mine, Teresa, and I owe her so much. And she said, Nicole, I don't really want to buy anything from your garden, but I would absolutely love it if you'd teach me how to garden the way you do.
Mm.
And that was my light bulb moment. And I thought that sounds like a lot more fun than washing a bunch of lettuce, and bagging it up.
Yeah, I wish
So
I'd have
yeah,
taken
so I
that
started the
advice.
garden. So I really had only had I would say I had 2 full years in Houston. That 2015 was when I started my garden and really the seed, pun intended, of all my concepts. So the garden setup, the 4 seasons of the garden,
Hmm.
and the graduation of learning the plants in the garden. They were all in there, within those 2 years.
So that was really, fast and furious into it.
It was.
And talk to me. Okay, so bring me around the loop here. So was that all in Houston? You started the business in Houston, then you moved to Chicago,
Yeah. So
where
I was
you
in
got
Houston.
radically rocked by a different climate.
Yeah. So I was in Houston 2015. I launched the business, just sent an email to anyone who was on my Gmail contacts. I think that's actually illegal to do now, but I did it. And I was like, I'm starting a business. I love the people of Houston. I love the gardens of Houston. My new business, I want to set up 100 new gardens. That's what I said. So I kicked that off in the fall of 15. And within a year, Luke, I'd probably done 60 consults and I'd probably set up 30 or 40 gardens. My company made $135,000.
So you were
I
charging like $2,000 a consult?
I charged to start, I charged $25 for a consult. My friend was like, you should raise your price.
Yeah, that's probably not
So
probably not going to make a living.
eventually I was charging like 150. But
Okay.
then what would happen is these clients would be like, okay, so I should do this with the garden. Can you do that for me? Like, can you get the stuff for me? And I was like,
Uh-huh.
sure, I can get the stuff for you. And then they would be like, can you build it for me? I'm like, sure, I can build it for you. And then they'd be like, well, it's beautiful. I love it. Can you come take care of it for me? And so
Right.
before, like, honestly, the clients just made the business for me in a sense because all of a
Right.
sudden a consult turned into products, turned into an installation, turned into a subscription service. So
Gotcha.
it was like the most beautiful business model that just like keeps feeding itself. So every consult I did, probably 1 out of 2 or 3 would turn into an install. And then every install I did, 1 out of 2 or 3 would turn into a maintenance. So it was just like this crazy
Mhm.
spiral, and like no one was doing this. There was one
So
other
in many
company.
ways, the lead generation
Is the
was
consult
the cheap consultation because you
exactly.
knew, hey, on the back end, I'm probably going to be able to sell a whole landscape install for this
Exactly.
ticket price. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
I didn't know the words for that at the time. I was just doing it, but I
Right.
eventually realized, oh, this is an actual business model and it works.
So speaking of
So
words, when did you develop the name Gardenary? Because that's like one of those mushed together fake.
I
You
know.
know, you just like threw
Yeah,
a dictionary and garden together
I
and
know. I
made a
kind
new
of regret
Zillow,
it.
right?
I kind of
Now it's
regret
like
it
a big
now.
brand. Why
I
do you
regret it
regret it?
now because it's a long name. It's like how many syllables? You're supposed to have like I watched Sarah Blakely's Training Too Late, where she's like one syllable, easy to say. I'm like, people are like gardener. I'm like, sir, this bad. What I did, so I had my first company was actually called Rooted Garden, and
Okay.
that was from my mom.
Mm,
Because when we had no money and we had all those kids, and my husband was getting his training as a chemist, I wanted plants, but I couldn't afford any. So she would take cuttings and root them for me. And she taught me, I landscaped my entire front yard with rooted cuttings.
wow.
And it was just this beautiful image to me of, I mean, I literally am still stunned to the day that you can take a plant, you can cut it off, and then it will grow an entirely new plant.
Mm,
Like that is they are otherworldly from animals, right? Like if you break off something from an animal, you've injured it for life. And if you break off something from a plant, it multiplies. And that just literally stunned me. It was just like such a beautiful, hopeful thing. And so I called my first business Rooted Garden. And then as it was growing, so I grew it 2015, 2016 did about 135K in sales. And then the spring of 2017, Luke, like I was in the hospital. I was so busy. My kids were all in elementary school and people kept calling. Like I'm not exaggerating. It was like the most physically demanding thing I've ever done. And I've had 4 kids naturally. Like it was crazy. And I was putting in, like, I made 135 before May. Like, it was just crazy. And it was just me and a team that I contracted to. So I ended up very sick. And it took like 3 trips to the ER to figure out like how to get
wow.
better. And I was like, whoa, 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 let's slow this down a little bit. So that summer I took off and did some traveling with my kids. I took them across back to Virginia where we used to live. And I bought some courses on having an online business. And I was like at a crossroads where I could either like really build up a fleet of like trucks and team and go all in on this install business, or I could scale it by teaching other people and kind of taking this online.
Wow.
And for us at the time, we weren't sure we were going to live in Houston long term. My husband was at MD Anderson. We weren't sure we were going to live there forever. I have 4 kids. They're all very young. I just couldn't picture myself. It would have been, honestly, looking back, that's probably the better business. Like, that's the business I probably would have kept and scaled. But for me at that time, as a mom of 4 young kids and with Jason's impermanence, like it was just not the right move for me. And so I taught myself I learned through lots of courses how to set up an online business. And because I wanted to scale and I definitely wanted to reach a lot of people. And so I listened while we were driving, we literally drove 21 hours to Charlottesville and all the way back home. And I taught myself how to get started. And so when I was at my parents again, I was like, I need a business name for this. Like all these people are doing these, it's just like the time of everybody taking words and smushing them together because all the normal words are taken. And so the word came because like my real mission is that I want gardening to be ordinary again, like that agrarian culture that we were talking about. I want people to feel that in their everyday life. And maybe it's not aspirational. Actually, I was doing this thing with ChatGPT about our mission, and they're like, it's not very aspirational to make gardening ordinary. And I'm like, okay, but like that is the sentiment is like, I watched yoga became very mainstream, over like the early 2000s where like no
Hmm.
one knew about yoga or it was for weirdos, right? And then, or you had to be from like India or
Yeah,
something
it's
to
like
be a
Eastern
yogi.
meditation and
Yeah.
not okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like I'd be at the park and every mom has on yoga pants. And I'm like, what happened? Like, when did this become normal? And it's like, so everyone has a pair of yoga pants, whether or not they do yoga. And so I started saying, like, to everybody I met, like, I'm going to make gardening as normal as yoga pants. And
Wow.
that's Gardenary. So yeah, so I got back home, still kept Rooted Garden going. And then in the margins, like when my preschooler was taking a nap in the afternoons, I started slowly building Gardenary online to teach my methods to people all over, and then also to help other gardeners start businesses if they wanted to.
So Gardenary is not garden answers like dictionary. It's garden ordinary.
Oh, it could have been dictionary. You know what? You're the first person who said that, but no, the first idea was gardening is ordinary.
Okay, so like in
Yeah.
my head, when I see gardenary, I was like, oh, it's like a garden dictionary. Like she's
Oh,
gonna
that's
have the
so cool.
answers
Ah,
and the terms
maybe
for
I'm gonna rebrand,
new
Luke.
business.
Come on, you can be my rebrand specialist. Tell Paul.
Woo!
I'm gonna
Yeah.
borrow you
Brand
for
advancement director for gardenary. Oh,
yes, the
no.
dictionary for gardening. I love it. Although I don't know how many people are excited about a dictionary, but
Yeah, it's a very small amount.
yeah.
Libraries are kind of
Yeah, the librarians are gonna go crazy for it.
Yeah,
They're gonna
yeah.
sign up right away.
Yeah, they're in.
Yeah.
On that note, this podcast is brought to you by SeedTime. SeedTime is a digital garden planner where you can actually figure out all the stuff we're talking about on when to plant, what to plant in your garden, and stay on track easily with a companion phone app and plan everything out. It is so much more than that, so make sure you get your free account today at seedtime.us. So I want to zoom into some of this gardening because I've seen the pictures of your gardens and they're just stunning and beautiful. And everything is very, very tightly packed
Yeah.
into this garden. Let's dive in there because I think that's unique because most of the online stuff that people read or ChatGPT or Google for plant spacing, you don't follow a lot of those guidelines. And I
Yeah.
like that. You're
Yeah.
kind of a rebel. So talk to me about your
Yeah.
planting, how you plant these gardens and how tight all these things are spaced.
Yes. I'm a rule breaker. I'm the second born. So, it's just part of the role that I play in life.
Me too.
My dad is a pastor, and so I used to joke that my sister, she was the knowledge of good and I was the knowledge of evil.
My dad's a pastor.
Hey, we have that in common.
There we
I
go.
hope that you're getting some good therapy to recover. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I used to joke. She was the rule keeper, I was the rule breaker, and together, we made life a lot more interesting. So I brought it over to the garden. I didn't really mean to, honestly. We did in those first gardens, we did everything the back of the seed packages and plant tags said. And fast forward to that first, we were in that gardening phase, and I was still trying to figure things out, especially in the summer in Houston. Our fall garden was packed, but in the summer, everything was really struggling. And the summer of 2015, before I started my business, I didn't know I was going to start a business yet. Like that was yet to be decided. Jason wanted to go to Big Bend National Park for his 40th birthday. And so we went, and no one was there. We drove, we didn't, like, you have no phone service. We're literally using a MapQuest, printed out piece of paper to get there because it was July. Like, no one in their right mind goes to Big Bend in July. And Luke, it was crazy because we'd be walking, we would take these little hikes and desert crawls, and like there were plants everywhere, and thriving, like beautiful. Now, obviously, these are plants adapted to live in hot climates and things. But what I noticed, like we were hiking, and I was just thinking about my garden and, our struggles in Houston that summer. And I'm like, why are these plants not struggling? Like, why do they look better than the things I'm growing in my garden? And I started to just notice a pattern that when we would be on this hike, there'd be like sand. So just like nothing. And then there'd be plants. And it was never one plant alone. And it was never plants like, formally spaced out. It was also always clumps of plants. Yeah.
Mm.
And not just that, but a wide variety. So in the middle, you might have this huge, tall, like century plant. Then you'd have these bush-like plants. And then you'd have on the exterior, like these sprawling, vining kind of ground cover like plants.
Mm.
And the pattern repeated every time we would see groups of plants. They were always like this, never alone, never widely spaced, always clumped together, always in wide variety. And so I went back to my garden. I'm like, I'm going to just try that. And so I started with this idea of just giving every plant the space it requires, but nothing more, and really switched the way I started just filling up the beds, like as full as possible. And anytime I had this idea in my head, like, I'm just not going to let there be any bare soil. And every time, I see bare soil, I'm going to plant something there.
Mhm.
And that became like my mantra, like no bare soil. And I brought this over to my clients' gardens when I started in 2015. Some of this also stemmed from the fact that they wanted to grow everything, right? I would send out this
Right.
survey of like, these are the things that grow this season. Check off the ones you want to grow. And they would check everything. And they had a box that was a 4x4, you know? And you're like, I think we need to get a few things
Let's
cleared up
talk.
here. Like, where's your farm? Because that's what we're going to need. I would explain to them, like, if you want a lot of production of one plant, we need to plant a lot of that one plant. But if you actually want to like have the experience and education of learning how these things grow, we can plant all these things in one bed.
Wow.
And so I was doing it for clients. I was doing it in my own garden, and the results were just crazy good. And I realized, like, oh, this switches the tasks. Like, this moves the garden tasks from watering and weeding to pruning and harvesting, because you do have to prune. Like, if you plant the way I plant, literally your number one job is pruning. And for me, I just like that better. I like pruning. It's very fun for me.
Yeah.
It's like the other day I came in from a workout and we had some things to do that afternoon and the sun was out. I just knew I was going to get like a really good detox sweat on. And I told Jason, I was like, I'm going to go do some pruning. I'll be right back. And I just went out there, like the sun was beating down on me and I was cutting, and it was like such a release. So, like, if I
Mhm.
could do that and not weed and water or fertilize. And that was the other thing I learned. Actually, I think it was in one of the tours at Big Bend. They talked about how, like, bare soil exposed to sunlight is like second by second losing its nutrients, like basically the sun bleaches things. So anytime you've got soil that's exposed to all the elements, it's losing nutrients in real time. And so that became part of it too, is like, if I can cover the soil with plants, I can protect all the investment I've put into that soil to make it great.
Mhm.
So it just became my new thing. Like, I became that crazy plant lady that just packs it in.
I love it. I love it. So let's try to like dive down into the strategy in what is packed in and how tight.
Yeah.
So what are some maybe like a top 3 or 4 ways that you pack these plants in together? And are
Yeah.
you doing that at direct seeding, or are most of these transplants? Let's say you have carrots, something that is not a transplantable crop.
Yeah.
Um, how are you managing that and shifting that in?
Yeah, so I go to my leaves, roots, and fruit model, which is my second book. So what I first figure out is what season I'm in. So let's take,
Hmm.
for instance, our fall season right now. Okay.
Hmm.
So you could have three divisions, but for the most part, let's just divide the country into like two categories. So half the category, their frost date isn't coming till late November, December, maybe even January. So this is going to be their warm season. They're going to have temps 65 to 85, no chance of frost. That's their season. For those who are going to have frost August, September, October, they're in the cool season. So temps are going to be coming down, ranging from 45 to 65 with a chance of frost.
Hmm.
So that's the first step, is you figure out what season you're in. So for all of us, we're
Hmm.
basically going into two seasons. Then I name the leaves, the roots, and the fruit for that season. So
Hmm.
let's say for the cool season, the leaves are going to be spring mix, spinach, arugula, romaine. The root crops are going to be carrots, radishes, beets. And then the fruiting crops are going to be broccoli, cauliflower, romanesco, sugar snap peas. all the things, that come in the flower or after the flower. So once I've got the season, and then once
Mhm.
I've got the divisions, leaves, roots, and fruit, then I give each thing, basically my numbers are 1, 4, and 9. There are exceptions, but for the most part, it works. So 1 square foot for a fruiting crop,
Mhm.
4 per square foot, 1 per square foot for a fruiting crop, 4 per square foot for a root crop, maybe more if it's like a carrot or a radish.
Right.
And then leafy greens are 9 per square foot. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah, so 149 is my number. And then like I said, there's exceptions. So say like
Sure.
I would do beets like 4 to 5 per square foot, but carrots I would do more like 12 per square foot.
Mhm.
And then I do the rows. So in general, like if you are familiar with square foot gardening,
Mhm.
he did it like I liked his concept, but like to me it's not very pretty. It's like very blocky, and to me plants are more round. And
Yeah.
so my design, the reason why it looks the way it does is because I think in circles, whereas he worked with squares. So he
Right.
would do like a square of carrots, a square of garlic, a square of peppers or whatever. For me, I do rows of circles. So it's like a long row down the middle of the fruit and crops, 2 rows beside it of the root crops, and then rows on the outside of the leafy greens
Mhm.
using those numbers. So you'd have 1 per square foot, then 4 per square foot, and then 9 per square foot.
Mhm.
So when you look at my gardens, like when you see them online, that's why they have this like, it's like a kind of
Rounded canopy, sort of
exactly.
billowy.
It's like a
Billowy.
tree.
Yeah.
Exactly. What did you say? What did you say after the
Billowy. It's like a
billowy? I love it.
billowy. Yeah.
Billowy. And so it's like it gives you this. My goal is like you feel a sense of symmetry, but it's not overt.
Mhm.
So it's like you sense symmetry, you sense some evenness, but it's also a little bit caught. It feels a little bit more wild, like you can't quite define it.
Mm.
But and to me, that's what I see in nature. That's what I saw in Big Bend, was tall in the middle, then a little bit shorter, and then sprawling.
Right.
And yeah, so that's the method, leaves, roots, and fruit inside the season. And then you change it every 3 to 4 months when the new season comes.
Right. So that's really a perennial permaculture design in the sense of canopies and layers and heights as to how you're designing these raised beds.
Oh,
Um,
cool. I didn't know that.
yeah, like the permaculture, it's like an annual permaculture design based
Oh,
on canopies and layers in terms of the look and feel and how you're doing it, which is all based on nature and forest canopies and, all that
cool.
stuff. So I love it. One thing that I wanted to kind of click in on, I'm imagining people's questions. Maybe maybe I'm just delusional, but people are like, okay, well, how are those roots all in there next to your fruiting crop? Let's just say we have
Yeah.
um, cucumbers and tomatoes that are trellised up a trellis in the center of this raised bed, but then really close to it are our carrots and beets and turnips. When those root crops come out, what kind of damage is done to the soil structure of these uh, tomatoes and cucumbers and fruiting crops?
I've never noticed damage. Um, Maybe there is, but for me, so I do have it spaced out, so for this is at least in my theory, okay, is that the fruiting crops, their roots go much
Hmm.
deeper,
Hmm.
right? And so like a tomato's roots, the ends are going to be down here at least a foot, if not,
Hmm.
well, 14, 15 inches below that plant.
Hmm.
If you do it right, if you've got good porosity in your soil and deep beds, those fruiting crops should be digging down deep.
Right.
Whereas the root crops, their roots at most, now you might have one a ginormous carrot, but for the most part, their roots are really only 5, 6 inches down below the soil level. Again, you'll have carrots that might go to 10 or
Right.
something, but for radishes, beets, garlic,
Hmm.
onions, most of those are sitting around the 4 to 5.
Right.
And then you have your leafy greens, and they have tiny root structures that really just sit on the surface.
Hmm.
So if you were to take like a side angle photo, what you see above is very much imitating what you see below, right?
Hmm.
So it's like I learned that, when I learned how trees grow, right?
Right.
Like that really cool picture where it's like
Right.
the pine tree is up this high and it's down that low.
Hmm.
And so you want to think underground, the same thing is happening, right? So those big fruiting crops have deep roots, root crops have a little bit shallower, and then the leafy greens, herbs, flowers, very shallow roots.
Hmm.
So I've never seen a real disturbance. And if it happens, it's far enough into the season that that fruit crop
Right.
has plenty of other root systems that
Hmm.
can regenerate and take care of it.
I think where I was going with that is a lot of people when they're trying to get their carrots, they're not their soil. They think of their soil differently because it's not in this context, and
Yeah.
they're needing to use some sort of support or fork to pull the carrots up because their soil is
Oh,
so
yeah.
tight and compact.
Yeah.
But in your context, you've got so much aeration with roots,
Yeah.
and it's a raised bed context. You grab the top of the carrot and it just
Boom.
pulls out. It just
Yeah.
comes
It's
out, and so
loose.
it's a totally different
Yeah.
thing. So really cool design to check that out, folks. If you haven't, give it a try. See what you think.
You're going
Um,
to love it. It's fun.
the other question that I had within there is, we talked a lot about cut and come again. A lot of that is harvest that you're eating, and
Yeah.
um, then you said you go out there and you prune. What do you
Yeah.
do with all your clippings? Are you a chop and drop, which is a term for those listening that don't know, where all your prunings, you basically leave it on the ground as material to decompose and build your soil organic matter and that sort of thing? Or because you have so much space in there that you don't have room to chop and drop, do you compost those clippings, or what are your processes there?
Yeah. I don't chop and drop because I save the soil space for plants, for seeds and things.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm more of a living mulch kind of girl. I would rather have an herb, a flower, a green, a nasturtium, a bush bean. I would rather have something growing underneath a plant, even if it
Hmm.
doesn't fruit for me, like even if I don't get a lot of production over it. I rather that than like a dead mulch. But so I just compost everything. I have woods right behind my house. So that's a luxury because
Hmm.
I literally just have piles and piles of garden debris where I just let it sit and then pull from it when I'm
Hmm.
ready.
Hmm.
If there's any kind of like disease or fungus or pest problems, I'll put it in like the ornamental pile or just, kind of to do its thing
Okay.
on its own. But for the most part, it's just a cut, pile it up and stack it up, throw some dried leaves on top of it and let it do its thing.
So these are really like key differentiating things I want to really double click in on. Is you said a living mulch. So everything in your bed, you don't want exposed soil or a chipped mulch. You want something living that's
Yeah.
giving those root exudates an opportunity to, develop microbes and soil health.
Yeah.
It's a Everyone has this kind of concept that something living is always taking from the
I
soil. It's just
know.
nutrients coming out. Can you
Yeah.
kind of highlight that a little bit and talk about what you've seen over the years of doing this model of soil health? Granted, you're doing a lot of rotation, a lot of
Uh-huh.
different crops in different areas, but what have you seen with your soil health? And then what do you do for fertility through there as people are thinking, hey, if you're eating all this stuff coming out, where's the soil fertility coming back in? Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about
So
that?
I keep it pretty simple. So I just talked with a client about this the other day and she wanted to plant some kind of perennials in her raised beds. And I was like, honey, listen to me. Like your raised bed is a mansion and you're trying to put something in there that could grow in a gutter, So it's like
Mm,
you paid for the mansion, have caviar in there. And so for me, like raised beds, that's a investment, right? Like I've spent a good bit of money and time to create this garden. So my raised bed space, I don't want anything just sitting there. I want everything producing and working. Now it doesn't have to be something I can eat, but I want there to be something growing there. So you'll see a lot of gardeners online are very into like straw and wood chip mulch and lots of things, like lots of, decomposing things in their garden between their plants. And you'll never see that in mine. I think I'm greedy. I just wanted to have plants living in there. So I'm greedy for that space. And so what I do instead is, yes, I grow to cover the soil. And honestly, even if I didn't do anything else throughout the year, I think for the most part, my soil would be fine. because I keep it planted. Like it, you know, the so much of it is coverage. Like if you think about
Hmm.
in nature, yes, you'll have leaves drop and things like that, just some natural decomposition on top of the soil. But like there, like in nature, so many, spots, just there, no one's coming back and adding in new things to the soil. But the soil is covered, and that's what keeps the soil healthy.
Mm.
What I do add is just some mushroom compost. So not a lot, but what I will do is like come in between seasons. So I'll let everything grow as it's going, and then I'll come in right as I'm adding the next season. So I
Hmm.
don't really do it during the growing season, but like for instance, right now, as I just did this maybe 2 weeks ago, I'm transitioning my beds over to the cool season here in Nashville. I'll be planting them up probably next month. And so I just came in, I just had like maybe 6 cubic feet of mushroom compost that I spread
Hmm.
among my like 200 square feet of garden. So
Mm.
just a little inch, maybe an inch or two on the surface. I don't rake it in. I just let it sit there on the top.
Hmm.
And I find like the earthworms come up and grab it, pull things down, and just keep the soil aerated. So I'll
Hmm.
just do like a coating basically on top, probably I would say 2 to 3 times a year. When we were turning over gardens in Houston and we planted them 4 times a year, that was part of our subscription service. So when we would pull the plants, we always try to leave the roots unless they're like a really large plant that is going to disrupt seed starting in the bed.
Hmm.
We generally cut at the base of the plant, leave the roots intact, add 2 to 3 inches of mushroom compost or like you know, a really, you could do a leaf mold compost as well, and then plant right into that for the next season.
Cool. So you specifically talked about different kinds of compost. So you have like a mushroom compost, which is very fungally dominant. Where were you sourcing that?
Yeah.
And then the follow-up question is, you said a leaf compost. Did you ever lean on any of the manure composts, or why not?
Yeah, great question. So I did manure, like I tried when I was in Houston, there was actually a horse farm that sold like finished manure.
Hmm.
I've just gotten burned literally like too many times with manures that it's made me afraid. Like it feels harder to know for sure that it's finished.
Hmm.
Um, it can be hard to know if like just a normal compost is finished or like not hot anymore. But I've burnt my plants a couple times with animal manures, and it's just I don't know. I think I trust it less, just like
Hmm.
with all the shots and things that animals get. I think I just
Mm.
trust it less than the plant world. So I'm not talking down on it or like if it works for people, that's great. But for me, I lean more toward plant decomposition versus manures. I'll use rabbit manure. I used to like go when I first started my business. Oh my gosh, I was like working with all these different farms. I'd get rabbit manure and chicken poop, and stuff like that. So I've used it, but just in the general like practices, I just lean toward the plant
Right.
varieties of compost.
Right, right. It is interesting because sourcing some of these things can be a challenge.
Yes.
Some of the stuff that we've come to find as like tried and true for our geographic location and price point and all that stuff is not equal and doesn't translate to other
Yeah.
places out there. So it's a fascinating kind of challenge. Is half of the stuff is just sourcing the right materials, and I think
Yeah.
that's why a lot of your clients were like, "Hey, overwhelm. I'm at Costco and I have too much options. Can you shop for me? Can
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
can you build the irrigation system? Can you build the raised beds? Can you bring in the soil? I want all these plants, but can you put like too much?" And I think what you've done is like, hey, we've got all this information, in our heads. This is second nature to us. It's like learning to drive. Um, we we know how to do it and we're happy to do it for you, but we want to coach you along the way, like, but we also, as the teacher, the Nicole Burke at Gardenary, is she's got the gas pedal and the brake pedal on the passenger side of the vehicle, making sure that you're not getting in a car wreck. Right?
Yeah, I
I,
try. I try.
I love it. Um, let's do a little bit of a lightning round. As we dive in towards the end of this conversation. What is your biggest failure in the garden?
Ish. This
That's
is
like a
not
terrible
lightning
lightning
at
round
all.
question.
I just haven't had any fails, so it's just really hard to
Oh, it's
remember.
just so
I'm just
hard. Yeah.
kidding. Probably that biggest fail was that first summer in Houston where I tried to grow all the normal quintessential vegetables and my
Hmm.
garden just like burnt up. So that was that was probably my biggest failure was not I just didn't grasp how hot it was going to be and how
Hmm.
those typical plants would hate it.
What do you do when you're living in a environment where you have both ends? You've got super hot, above
Yeah.
triple digits regularly through the summer, where a lot of your fruiting crops kind of shut down and lock in and don't really want to produce those tomatoes or cucumbers or whatnot. And then disease pressure begins to set in. And on the reverse side, you get pretty cold.
Yeah.
Um, what do you do there?
So hot, you're going to grow things that thrive in very hot climates. So I started planting things that grew in Southeast Asia, in the Caribbean, in North
Mm,
Africa. So we would switch gardens from tomatoes, cucumbers, squash to Armenian cucumbers, yard long beans, tomatillos, we did cotton, we did okra, we did sweet potatoes. So there's a whole world of crops that you've probably never thought of growing that thrive when it's literally 100 degrees outside and there's very little rain. They're like literally, they've evolved to, they turn themselves spicy, they turn themselves prickly.
hmm
They have found ways, these plants have found ways to survive on low water, high
hmm
heat. So you switch to those plants, you do a turnover. So that's what we would do in Houston. We
Perfect.
would switch the plants from warm season to hot season. For cold season, you have to go to covers. So you either, you've got to find a way to like keep the soil 10, 15 degrees warmer. So you can do that with really thick coverage or you just let the garden rest. So that's another option. Like if it goes really
Hmm.
cold, then you switch to like doing salad indoors and doing sprouts and microgreens and you get creative of what you can save and dry from because
Hmm.
if you had that hot season and the warm, you've had a lot of time to grow a lot of crops. So you grow more and you harvest what I call you do the double harvest when it's growing. You harvest for fresh and then you harvest to dry or freeze and save or pickle. And then you get to eat those things when it's really cold. But yeah, you have to adapt. You have to think like, what are your priorities? What are your highest priorities? And then it's totally okay if you hate the summer or if you hate the winter, just take a break, like cover your soil, make sure your soil is covered for that season, and then take a rest and be ready for the next one.
I love it. Okay, now we're actually going into the lightning round.
For real? For
For
real, for real.
real. Real this
We're
time.
doing it. Let's go.
What's your favorite crop?
Lettuce.
What is your favorite pruning shear since you prune so often?
Needle nose pruner. Very, very, very thin, sharp line. The most expensive one is Sophie Conran by Bergen and Ball. We have some in our shop as well, but the Bergen and Ball ones, like if you really want to invest, it's expensive, but definitely worth it.
Um, what is your favorite medium for a raised bed? Wood, plastic, recycled,
Yeah.
metal?
So I love the look of wood. I just think obviously like it's a plant, like you're planting plants and plants. And so I think it has a really just welcoming organic feel. We seal our beds with like a whey protein that like seals them to make them last longer. I love a wood bed with a lip on it so I can sit down and take care of
Mhm.
the garden.
If you have $100 to spend on getting started in a garden, where should you spend that $100?
Yeah, so I have, you can watch my YouTube on how to build a raised bed from wood for $100. That's all you
Perfect.
need. Yeah, literally. It's actually under $100 because we showed you how to do it with pine, untreated pine, and then treat it to make it last naturally. But under $100, you make this bed. It's got little framing angles. We use like decking angles, so
Hmm.
you don't have to be a carpenter. You don't have to know how to saw. They'll cut the wood for you at Home Depot. So it's literally like under $50, maybe $60 in all your hardware. Build the bed and then use my soil blend, which is compost, coarse sand and topsoil mixed together, third. You can get that at Ace Hardware. Get those bags. You can do like the bottom, do it with leaves and things like that, and then do the top with my mix. And then plant 100% from seed, which is going to cost you about $5-10. We actually have a little like set of seeds that would plant up the whole 16 square feet. It's called the Easy Garden Kit. So it's like arugula, spinach, spring mix, carrots, radishes, peas. That's great for the cool. If you're in the warm, do zucchini, cucumber, bush bean, and arugula. And those, you could get those seeds for like under $30, and then you will literally have food growing out of your ears. And that whole thing would cost $100.
Man, that was awesome. That was great. Where do people find you if they're interested in learning more about Gardenary? Where are you
Yeah,
at?
we have thousands of articles at gardenary.com. So you could pretty much search any plant you want to grow and then Gardenary afterwards, and you'll find 5 to 10 blog articles about them. And then we're on all the socials. We have about 3 million followers across YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Pinterest. So pick your favorite. And we're there at Gardenary Co. with a CO at the end. And then our start to finish grass to garden program is called Kitchen Garden Academy. So if you wanted to go deep on these methods, we have a link to that at gardenary.com.
Awesome. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us in the How I Grow This podcast. That was so much fun.
Thank you, Luke. You are a great interviewer. It's really fun to talk to you.
And thanks for staying tuned all the way to the end. We're so excited that you're here, and that probably means that you enjoyed what you heard. You found some value in it. If you could, go and share this with somebody that you know that really helps push it forward in the algorithm. Hit a like, a subscribe, hit a review. It makes all the difference for us. Thank you for listening to the How I Grow This podcast, and we are dedicated to bringing more of these stories to you to help you grow at the next level. We'll see you.